and welcome to this special. I'm Shibani Gharat and I'm at Xiaomi India headquarters in Bengaluru, and joining me in a special chat is Muralikrishnan B, President of Xiaomi India, along with Anuj Sharma, their CMO. Now, Xiaomi launched their first smartphone in the India market in July 2014, and after dominating the budget and mid-budget segment for many years, Xiaomi explored newer segments, categories as well as domains. Currently, Xiaomi has products and smartphones across different budgets, from entry to premium as well as flagships, and they have presence across categories including consumer tech, TVs, refrigerators, smart homes, laptops, tablets and more. And recently, they unveiled their car in the India market. To tell us more about this 10-year-old, 1 decade-long journey of Xiaomi in India and what lies ahead, we are joined in today by Murali and Anuj. Welcome to CNBC TV18.
Hi, Shivani.
Thank you.
Murali, let's begin this conversation with you. 10 years of Xiaomi India. How do you look back at the journey? Out of those 10 years, you've spent 6 years at Xiaomi India. So tell us more about the journey and what lies ahead.
Honestly, Shibani, when I reflect on these 10 years, it seems like a dream come true, a little bit like a fairy tale. And if I were to express my feelings, I would definitely use the terms like pride at all that we have accomplished over the course of these 10 years, creating a big impact on democratizing smartphones and 4G in India. A lot of gratitude. We definitely couldn't have done this alone. Our consumers, our Xiaomi fans, our partners, of course, Team Xiaomi India, friends in the media, all of us have wished us well, supported us where required, and got us to where we are. And I'm filled with optimism because the future is just so bright. It's a very, very special feeling being 10 years young.
Yeah, and also share an insight into, what lies ahead. What does the product pipeline look like? What are the innovations and launches that you are excited about?
If I were to reflect on the next 10 years, in the last 10 years, we shipped about 250 million smartphones, about 350 million devices across all categories. And when you've already accomplished so much and you want to start thinking about the next 10 years, you want to reflect on what's happening in that entire universe around you. And here the industry is changing. Today, you have mega companies evolving, right? You have people who have expertise in core technologies, and they are the ones who are able to sustain their advantage over a long period of time. Single brand companies, especially in smartphones, which is so intensely competitive, may not be able to survive. It's the ecosystem brands. People are able to string together multiple products and lock in the customer. They're the ones who will have a longer term advantage. So the one hand, and even the market and the way it operates between online and offline, that's changing. The consumer is changing. And just look at India, right? The spectrum of, in terms of age of the average user. Today, a kid as young as 10 years old, as well as a senior citizen as old as 80 years old, is comfortable with a smartphone. Smartphones are penetrating deeper into these smaller towns and villages. More and more women are becoming smartphone users, and the way they purchase their phones, researching online, shopping offline, vice versa. So the consumer is changing, and technology, as you all know, is also changing. Now, in this context, Xiaomi wants to be front and center in driving this technology revolution. We see ourselves as a global hardcore technology pioneer. And this reflects in a larger philosophy of what we call human into car into home. Human in terms of personal devices that we use, car in terms of smart mobility, and home in terms of actually making your home smarter. And we want to be front and center in driving this.
Okay.
And that's the broad direction that we are thinking.
Yeah, and how does the consumer look at Xiaomi today?
I think it took us about 5 to 6 years to get to a level where consumers have started trusting us. And that trust obviously came across as, when Murali said, we got, say, smart TVs. So going from smartphones to smart TVs, and smart TVs, for example, for phones, it took us about 3 years to get to the #1 position. For smart TVs, it took us less than 3 quarters. Right? So the trust level had started actually building there. With that connect, and obviously the larger focus that we have in terms of, touching your life across all points, whether you are at work in terms of productivity, whether you're at home in terms of the smart devices, or hopefully in the future when you would be on the road with, say, the electric vehicles, the whole idea and the trust thing, there is one particular company that can bring all of that together, has started coming up. We are known a bit more today than we were about 10 years ago in terms of bringing in some specialized technologies, bringing in a good understanding of what the Indian consumer needs, and to be able to kind of tie it down together and in a way deliver it in a simple message. So from a brand perspective, last 10 years has largely been about educating consumers more than anything else.
Educating consumers about?
About the benefits of the technology that we are bringing in, and essentially taking away that fear. 10 years ago, there was this little fear about adoption of new tech. Am I going to be comfortable with it? I think we've played a huge part in enabling more consumers in India to be comfortable saying, okay, I want a smart home device, let me get a Xiaomi One.
So having said that, how much do other categories contribute to your revenue as compared to smartphones?
A majority of our business clearly comes from smartphones, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
which is what percentage?
It's been around for the longest time. We don't really split out our smartphones versus other category in terms of our business in India. That being said, smartphones has been around 250 million overall is the amount of smartphones we've shipped till date, whereas 350 million is total number of devices across categories. So 100 million is the non-smartphone piece, but this is cumulative over 10 years, right? Now, depending on which source you trust, there are anywhere between 250 to 300 million households in India. The starting aspiration is, can every household in India have one Xiaomi product? It need not be a smartphone.
Yeah.
It could be a television, it could be a power bank, it could be a smart security camera, it could be a tablet, it could be a smartwatch, it could be anything. Can we start with every household in India having one Xiaomi product?
Sure.
And then, because of how compelling that experience is, and that's something that we are betting on, right? You have a Xiaomi product, you use it for a period of time, you will get to love it,
yeah.
right? And then you'll say, hey, can I get another one? You go to the shop, you look at online, you maybe get the other product, and both of them work well together. And then you get a third one, and then you get a fourth one, and lo and behold, you have the promise of that connected ecosystem playing out. Shivani, that's the big thing that we are truly excited about.
Yeah, but with an increased in focus on the other categories, going forward, what will be the ideal situation for you in terms of driving revenue for Xiaomi India?
We laid out this goal of saying we want to ship an incremental 700 million devices over the next 10 years. In the last 10 years, 350 million devices, we want to double this momentum in the next 10 years to 700 million. Now, the smartphone market, for all you know, is not going to grow in huge double-digit numbers, right? Beyond a point of view, already have 650 million odd smartphone users in this country. It might grow at 6, 7, 8% CAGR over the next 10 years. Today, you have the transition from 4G to 5G, maybe 6G would come, but 6, 7, 8% broadly, if you look at analyst reports, is what that market is going to grow from, anywhere from 150, 160 million. It might go to 220, 230 million. Now, if you truly need to get to that 700 million, it has to be on the back of the smart AIoT connected ecosystem devices. And there, today, we not only have an exciting portfolio, but the idea is how can we keep having new products that we launch in the market, which meet the consumer's need, can disrupt the market, and therefore deliver to the true Xiaomi promise of bringing innovation for everyone.
Yeah, but can you give me an example on, a completely unique or a different launch that, you had to put forth in front of the consumer? How did you go about it? What was the consumer reaction there?
Maybe, one known case study is actually the smart TV side, right? So smart TVs were launched in Feb of 2018. Sure. But the groundwork was actually started a couple of years before that. And at that point, one understanding that was there is, people were moving from traditional linear TVs into OTTs. The adoption had to come up. In 2016, the adoption of 4G shot up. So the data consumption had come up. And we expected that with this higher data consumption, your OTT consumption will also go up.
That's right.
So that was prepared. But then you couldn't completely depend only on the smart features of it, because people would switch between smart and linear TV. So our TVs actually had a way of controlling your traditional set-top boxes through a separate IR cable that you could buy. Then along with that, we also developed a data mode, because you've got 4K TVs. You start streaming on your 4G hotspot, you're going to run out of your 1 GB, 1.5 GB cap pretty quickly. So we developed a load, kind of a data saver mode for those TVs. So you could enable that. So when your phone is connected, it's not going to completely, run your data to the ground. So all of these aspects were kind of worked in by the time we launched in 2018. And I think that was like an instant hit. That it touched all the key points.
One more thing that I'll pick, and Smart TV is a great example. And this is in terms of just the software interface. And this is a theme that you'll find across products. For us, it's not about selling hardware, right? It's about selling the combination of hardware and software. And going forward, perhaps it's a combination of software into hardware to the power of AI, right? But we'll come to that later. In the Xiaomi Smart televisions, there is a software interface called a patch wall, right? Now, traditionally, smart televisions were much like smartphones, where all the apps, your Netflix and so on and so forth, were just menu icons when you load the smart television. Instead, we turned it upside down and we said, look, you need to make content the hero, not the app, right? And therefore, when you boot up a Xiaomi television, you have nice, large web banners like thing. You have carousels showcasing shows that you might be interested in, number one, including new launches and so on and so forth. There are strips at the bottom which say, look, continue where you left off on Netflix, on Prime, and so on and so forth, right? So the entire interface itself was reimagined to encourage content consumption and not just shuttling between apps. Apps are important, but they're secondary. What matters is the content and what's relevant to you, and that worked big time for us.
Yeah, and how do you come up with whether this particular product would be ideal for a launch right now? How do you decide that? How do you come up with that? What are the global inputs, from your headquarters, and how do you decide whether this product is ideal for launching in the India market and whether it will work here?
Number one is, do we have that product category in our global business? Because starting R&D from scratch in a new product category is going to be expensive. You might as well ride on something that's already worked, because there are already insights going into that. Number one. Number two, we will then try and, for mainline categories, we'll try and assess, is the market large enough to address? Right? It's not that we don't want to address small markets, but then the thought process is different. Those are called experimental categories. We will come to experimental categories. But A, is the market large enough, either today or tomorrow? Two, is there a disruption potential? Smart TV is an example. There was a clear disruption potential because content consumption is increasing. Therefore, there's a smart TV opportunity.
And then pandemic also helped the smart TV.
Well, actually, 2018 is when we launched smart televisions, and end of 2018, we became number one. Pandemic definitely helped, but I think the momentum was built even prior to that.
Yeah.
And so the second thing is there a disruption potential? Three, do we have enough insights to localize that to meet the needs of the Indian consumer?
Sure.
If these three sort of come together, then we'll work with the product teams and try to define the product and see how quickly we can get that across. And then, of course, there's a lot of work done on marketing, on what we call GTM, right? In terms of what are the models, what are the variants, what are the colors, what's the pricing, what's the finish, etc., and take that to market, and hopefully things go well.
On that note, it is time for a short break. You don't go anywhere. This conversation is about to get even more interesting.
Artificial intelligence.
Welcome back, and in a special chat at Xiaomi India headquarters in Bengaluru, I'm joined in by Muralikrishnan B and Anuj Sharma. Post-pandemic, there were supply chain issues that most of the technology companies had to grapple with, specifically Xiaomi with that whole anti-China sentiment that, most of the Chinese companies had to face. So how did you deal with all of that, to come back on your feet again?
Shibari, when I started, I told you the story of Xiaomi India is a little bit like a fairy tale. And a fairy tale has its ups and its downs, its modes of, its moments of tragedy too. And I look back on 2022 as the year where we hit a speed bump, and a big one at that, right? So up until then, The wind was behind us. Pretty much everything that we touched turned to gold. And of course, in 2020, 2021, it was a seller's market for smartphones because demand far outstripped supply,
That's right.
like you mentioned, for supply chain reasons. And as a result of that, everybody, all the analysts, all brands, overestimated market growth in 2022. But once the Omicron wave died in, about March of 2022, suddenly we saw the demand being sucked out of the market, right? Because earlier people were buying an additional smartphone for their kids, etc., all the demand got sucked, but we expected the market to grow. Now you should realize that the smartphone business is a bit like the fish business. It's like the vegetables business, right? I mean, if you're not able to sell your catch by the evening, it quickly gets outdated and you have to deep discount it to liquidate because technology is changing so fast. You plan a life cycle volume in the next 6 to 9 months. If you can't sell that volume by that time, then you have to deep discount it because otherwise you're going to be stuck with inventory. And that's sort of the situation we found ourselves in. Plus, multiple other things happened. The entry-level market where we were super strong, that started shrinking because of price increases, impact of inflation. The price of entry-level smartphones started going up. Sure, we got impacted because of that. The mid segment, anywhere between, let's say, 12 to 25,000, that did not grow because people were stuck between 4G and 5G. They didn't know when to make the choice and when to make the switch. So they postponed and deferred their purchases. All put together, it was the perfect storm. It was a super challenging year.
And how did you correct those?
So let me just look at some of the mistakes we made. One, under pressure from competition. Because of some of the 4G, 5G complication, we just launched too many models. The beauty of Xiaomi was the simplicity in the portfolio. At every price point, there used to be one hero product. In fact, we internally, the inside joke is, we call it the koi debate nahi choice. You want a 10,000 rupee phone? Here's the option. You want a 15,000 rupee phone? Here's the option. You don't have to, weigh and the pros and cons of multiple options when it comes to Xiaomi. But we ended up fragmenting and confusing ourselves, the channel partner, the retailer, the promoter, the consumer, everybody, right? And we said, look, we need to correct that. So in 2023, we went in with a cleaner, sleeker, streamlined portfolio, cutting the number of models by 40%, number one. Number two, we realized that the time for 5G has come. The time to democratize 5G has come. So we took that up as the second priority for 2023. And three, we also realized that the offline retail channel was growing post the end of the pandemic. It was a larger chunk of the market and growing significantly faster, whereas a bulk of our strengths were in the online channels. So we said we have to build capabilities and focus on building our strengths in the offline retail channel. So we took this up as the three main focus areas in 2023, and that's the year that we call the year of reset, refresh, and recharge.
You also mentioned that 50% of your sales come through offline and 50% come through online. So what is the way forward for offline retail? Are you looking to open more stores, go to newer markets to set up brick and mortar?
So over the course of the last couple of years, we've actually significantly strengthened our capabilities in offline retail. And let me try and look at a few. One is streamlining our distribution structure. In the large cities, of course, we have a distributor who sells directly to the retailer. We also realize that there are many states where tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 markets are large. And therefore, we have a zonal distribution model structure to reach the far reaches of the country. And as a result of this, our width of distribution, or WOD, the number of outlets that we sell, has almost doubled over the course of the last couple of years to 30,000 plus. That's number one. Number two, we realized that the market is getting increasingly premiumized. And the Indian today, the average consumer in India today is increasingly aspirational. Somebody who was okay buying a 10,000 rupee phone a few years ago now wants a 15, 18, 20,000 rupee phone, right? And therefore, in order to handhold them up that entire purchase cycle, you need people on the ground in the shop to kind of explain the entire product to them. So we have scaled up promoter capability, almost tripling the number of promoters that we have over the course of the last few years. Thirdly, we also realized that the market is getting increasingly formalized in terms of modern trade. You have the large national chains, and then you also have the regional chains. We've also focused on strengthening our relationship with that chains, ensuring that we have strong retail in-store visibility. And as a result of this, that offline part of the business is actually on a roll, growing extremely well for us.
Yeah. And how has marketing shifted? Because, like as Murli mentioned that, someone who was willing to buy a 10,000 rupees phone a couple of years ago is now willing to spend more.
Right.
Also, the names of the segments have changed. What was earlier perceived as budget is no longer, or what was earlier perceived as mid-budget. That mid-budget has also moved from sub 15 or sub 20 to, let's say, 20 to 30 or 35,000 rupees. So how has marketing responded to that?
So I think overall from a marketing perspective, what has changed is going from speeds and feeds to actually benefits. The second aspect that's changed after the pandemic actually is people are holding on to the devices for much longer, which basically means that, people are expecting you to deliver a certain amount of quality. I think the average time right now is about 4 years before they're looking at changing their devices. So we have to actually focus on that aspect a bit more. The second part is when people are changing, versus earlier it used to be, okay, I've got a little more RAM or I've got a little more storage and that makes more sense. Now people are changing because they want something significantly more in terms of the key benefit they're looking for. In the premium segment, that's actually become cameras. So about 2 years ago, we tied up with perhaps the best camera brand in the world, which is Leica. And we started developing our flagship portfolio with their expertise, their lenses, as well as tuning. And this year, large part of our marketing was actually on the photography side. So what we realized were people were not changing their phones because it was slightly faster, but people were changing their devices because they were seeing a significant difference in the output. And I guess all of us are creators in some way. So we like to kind of see that quality come through.
Murli, we are meeting just ahead of the festive season. What are your expectations from this festival? What will the demand look like?
Well, first off, 2024 has been kind to the smartphone market. We saw low single-digit growth. The festive season is actually upon us. You have Onam starting first, and then Dussehra, Durga Puja, Diwali. Frankly speaking, I think the momentum is there in the market. We do expect to do well. Optimistic on the growth opportunities this time.
Anuj, what are some of the marketing plans, strategies in the pipeline?
So we've had to obviously change our strategies, right, over the last couple of years, because earlier it was fairly easy. So, we were mostly focused on online, e-com. You'd have those big e-com Diwali sales and you'd be done with it. Now our Diwali actually goes on for about 5 or 6 weeks. Right? So it's a mix of online plus offline. Last year we tried something different. So last year we had 2 amazing brand ambassadors. So on one side we had Disha Patani, who helped explain some of our phones and the whole 5G benefits. And then on the TV side, we had Mr. Pankaj Tripathi, who helped us out. That helped a lot with the offline side, and especially with markets that we weren't fairly strong. So we were able to get new markets opening up there. So taking a leaf out of that, this year for Diwali, we're trying to go a little bigger.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of surprises planned. Hopefully we'll start kind of rolling that out towards the second half of September.
Yeah.
So it should be a little bigger.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
With that, it's a wrap. Goodbye.